Okay, good day. Happy Friday, end of the week. Hopefully, you're looking toward a good weekend. Here in Nova Scotia today, we have a little bit of snow flurries that were going outside of my window. So that's the first ones for the season for us, or for me at least, that I've noticed. So we're getting into that time, and it's nice. It's kind of nice when the Christmas season starts to approach, and the early snows are kind of pretty. Anyway, wherever you are in the world, hope you're having a good day, and hope you're looking forward to a good weekend. I hope. We're going to do our devotional, Proverbs chapter 3, verse 8. We're on Proverbs 3, verse 8. Yesterday we did verse 7, and as I've introduced this chapter regularly, this part of Proverbs, every two verses go together, and we're focusing one verse at a time. We're going to still do that, but I got to read the verses together, the two verses, because they go together. And so there's this kind of pattern in this chapter of this results in this, this results in that. So verse 1 result is this thing, and then verse 2 is the result, and verse 3 is the thing, and then verse 4 is the result. So it's that kind of a pattern. So that's what we've been doing. If you're curious about verse 7, then yesterday's devotional, we'll talk about that in more detail. But let's read both of those verses together so we can see the flow of thought. Verse 7 says, "Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil." And then verse 8, which is today's verse, "It will be healing to your body and refreshment to your bones." So there it is. I'll say it again. "Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. It will be healing to your body and refreshment to your bones." So that part about healing and refreshment is what we're going to look at here today a little bit. What is that talking about? Well, I don't do this with most of the verses, but this one I think it might be worthwhile just mentioning the language of body. The book of Proverbs was originally written in Hebrew, in ancient Hebrew, and so we've translated it into English, and I use the New American Standard Bible, the 1995 edition of the New American Standard Bible, for the English translation. So if you read that way, you'll get the word body. But that word body can be translated in a number of ways, and so other translations may use other words like flesh, or I think one translation even uses the word energy or strength. I think. But anyway, there's a number of ways that can be translated into English, because the concept, the word actually very literally means umbilical cord. So, it'll be healing to your umbilical cord. It doesn't make a lot of sense to us. And so we understand that the word is poetic, and it's the word body, which means this idea of your inner body, right? The inner you, your guts, your flesh, your strength, your source of life, umbilical cord, your source, whatever you might want to say. But this idea of not just the idea of, oh, I have a cold, and if I fear the Lord, I will get healed of my cold. It's not talking about that kind of healing to the body. It's talking about a healing to the life rhythms of your body. And so in a sense, it's kind of implying your emotions, right? To the ancient world, the heart was the inner self, and more specifically, the emotions was kind of the heart, gut, bowel idea, right? And so that's not, we talk about loving people with all our heart, not all our bowel. But back then, they might have said, "I love you with all my guts," right? All my umbilical cord. So there's a weird kind of disjoint between our cultures, but that's the idea. And so it's a complex thing. But the poetry is this: that if you trust the Lord, if you don't just be wise in your own understanding, but fear the Lord and turn from evil, then it will be healing to your inner workings of yourself, your life rhythms, your source, your strength, your center, right to the bones, right? So the poetry goes, healing to the bones, refreshment, or healing to the body, refreshment to the bones, right? It's a rhythm of thought there. The inner you, right to the core of you. And so that's really very desirable, I would think. So question 1, how does this work? Let's go through our 4 questions. How does it work? How does me not trusting my own wisdom and fearing the Lord instead, his wisdom, trusting his wisdom, cause inner healing of my life rhythms, myself, my body, and so on? So in this context, I'm going to talk about this idea of this combination of things that lead to inner turmoil in our lives, even physically, but emotionally certainly, and so on. If you have in your life lots of responsibility, lots of things you have to do, you're required, you're responsible for, but you have little ability to do those things, then it creates anxiety, right? So if you think I have to, protect my family or provide for this or solve this problem or whatever, but I don't know how, right? I don't know the way. I don't have the wisdom to do it. You will have an increased amount of anxiety. And in our life, that happens. We find ourselves with all kinds of things we want to have certain outcomes to. We desire outcomes, or we think we're responsible to produce certain outcomes for our family or for our work or for even just our own happiness. But if we're trusting in our own wisdom, then we're going to find we lack the ability to accomplish those things. And this is why so many people go to YouTube all the time and search out, how do I find happiness, and how do I do this, and how do I do that? Because we're looking for somebody who's got wisdom. We start to recognize my wisdom is inadequate. Right? I can't accomplish all the goals and responsibilities and things I want. Our anxieties rise. We're discontent in the world, and so it makes our life in our core, in our body, in our bones, makes it less good, unhealthy, right? And that's the idea. And now, of course, there's also a reverse to this as well. If you have little responsibility in life, very few things you think you're required to do or that are obligations in your life, and lots of ability, well, it actually kind of has the same effect, as you could be doing so much more, and you know it. And so you become increasingly dissatisfied, increasingly drained, increasingly pointless. It'll feel like life has no meaning, and it'll be wearying to your body and bones and to your life rhythms and your strength. You'll find yourself kind of reverse. It's like, oh, I got stuff. I know I can do more than this, and yet I have no responsibilities, because you don't fear a higher power. You have nothing in your life driving you forward and saying, you need to do this, you need to be this, accomplish this, right? Which the fear of God produces in us. When we realize there's a God who created me with a purpose and an intention in life, but if I reject that, then I have little responsibility. My responsibilities are basically, what do I feel like doing? What do I want to do? And yet we were made with much higher levels of potential. God made us to be accomplishers and to be producers and to do well and contribute to society and life. So any of those things, either we trust too much in our wisdom and we have all kinds of responsibility that the wisdom isn't equipped to deal with, or we don't live up to our potential because we have no sense of responsibility, right? Either way, it's bad. It's an unbalanced kind of life. And this verse is kind of telling us, hey, pay attention to this. The way you find that balance is in the fear of the Lord, not trusting your own wisdom, but in the fear of the Lord. Let him put obligations on you that will be godly and therefore achievable, and let him empower you to do it, give you the wisdom to do it. And you will find your anxieties lessen, your dissatisfactions lessen significantly. It'll work. So question 2, how does proper balance in these things actually create a healing? So it uses the word healing to the body. So how do we get that healing? Well, over your life, you will tend to, as we grow and we mature as kids starting out and everything, we don't know God naturally. We don't really know him. We have to learn to know God. And so in your life, you will learn from your parents, you'll learn from your teachers, and just from living experience. And you'll slowly build patterns of anxiety in your life and dissatisfaction in your life. You'll slowly build patterns because you'll learn, if I do this, it causes that. And you're just trying to piece it together in your own wisdom. And as you grow older, you'll slowly build these unhealthy patterns, and we all do it. We build these unhealthy patterns of things that kind of cause functioning, but they're not really fully healthy. So they're dysfunctional, right? And so we all do. We learn to eat too much, or exercise too much, or we learn to trust humans too much, or trust them not enough, or we learn to trust ourselves or not trust ourselves enough. And whatever it is, we have a very hard time finding a good and proper balance in our life of these things. And so we create patterns of anxiety and patterns of dissatisfaction and habits that we wish we didn't have, and inadequacies grow, and it's really, really not good. So when we find the truth of God, and we start to discover how God actually has created and will empower our lives to live a healthy way, we start to realize all the things we need to realign and change. And as we start to do that, we don't trust in our own experience and wisdom, and we start to trust in God, and we don't just become our own gods. We start to fear him as God. then we start the process of changing those things. And that's what's healing. That's the healing it's talking about. It'll be healing to our life rhythms, to our body, to our inner self, because we start to discover how to live healthy in the way God made us to live. And it heals you. It just starts to, just by the process. Now, it's process. Anybody who thinks, hey, I read the book of Proverbs, why is my life better? Well, it takes time to start to reorient your life and to do it the way God wants you to do. So you got to be patient about it, but it is a healing process. Question 3, how does it bring refreshment? Refreshment to the bones. It's poetic, healing to the body, refreshment to the bones. But it's an idea. Like it's not just healing as in repairing bad ways, but it's refreshment as in energizing. And so I guess I, in my own personal testimony, I'd say I just find that as I grow better and better life patterns, godly life patterns and habits, it starts to give you energy. There's you still get tired and you still have all those things happen, but it energizes you. Like I always think of that story of Jesus. He was hungry and the disciples went to get food, and while he was waiting for them to come back, this woman came up to him and he has this interaction with her, and he tells her about the truths of God, and he has this great interaction with her as he teaches her. And then she goes off to the village to tell all her friends, I found this prophet, look at what he said. And the disciples come back and he's like, I've had food you don't know of. And they're like, oh, what happened here? And so they're kind of confused, but he's like, I got energized by doing the will of God. And it wasn't even physical food, just brought energy to him. So it's kind of like that, like as you learn to live the way God designed us to live in his wisdom and in the fear of the Lord, it does energize you. It gives you hope when you're in hopeless situations, and it gives you the ability to take another step when nearly everything inside of you that's not from God is saying just give up, don't take another step. And yet you can take that extra step because there's a refreshment in my bones to knowing that it's not my wisdom or my abilities or my purpose, it's his. So it refreshes. Now the last question is very important today. The last question is this: but I'm a Christian, and yet I find myself full of anxiety and full of dissatisfaction. So what's wrong? Why isn't this working? I'm a Christian. I believe in God. I fear him. And you may find yourself in this position and saying, I'm not finding this. This isn't my experience. Well, what I would suggest is this, and I don't mean to be offensive, but what I would suggest is this. Being a Christian doesn't mean you've mastered this. Just by being a Christian, it doesn't mean you've mastered it. We all have to learn to master it. We all have to learn to grow in it and to let the process do its thing. And for some of us, it takes longer than it does for others. It doesn't mean you're not a Christian, but it does mean that you haven't mastered something. So here's some things. Do you really, truly trust God or your own wisdom? Like, are you wise in your own eyes? Even though you're a Christian and you believe some of the things he said, but do you find that you still kind of default to your own wisdom and stuff instead of going to the scriptures? I mean, then of course you haven't fully taken your medicine, so to speak, right? You haven't let God do that work in you. So you're in process. Do you assess things through your own wisdom? Do you look at the world around you and you assess it by what you think is wise and what you think is good and what feels right in a moment to you? And if you're still living that way, even though you're a Christian, you can still live that way. That's just because you believe in God doesn't mean you've fully mastered all of this. You might be finding that you're still led along by your heart more than you are by God's heart, or whatever. Do you think that you're the judge of that God isn't the judge of your life? You're the judge of your own life. Do you have any fear of God and realize that no, I owe him my submission. I have to submit to him as Lord. Or have you kind of added him to the edge of your life, but he isn't Lord of your life? Well, then you're not going to find that yeah, you still have anxieties, you still have dissatisfactions because you haven't mastered that yet, right? Ungodly habits or attitudes that still sort of linger in our lives, and we need to still do the work of saying, okay, God, help me root out these bad life patterns and replace them with ones from you, your wisdom, because I belong to you. You don't belong, well, you belong to me, but I'm not your Lord, you're mine. So in the end of all this, what I'm basically saying today is take your medicine, keep reading the scriptures, keep praying, keep learning to submit yourself to God. Don't be wise in your own mind, submit to him, and you will find it really does work, that it will be healing to your life. It will be refreshment to your life. So God bless us in this, help us to accomplish it. In Jesus' name, amen. God willing, Tuesday is the next devotional, Tuesday at around 12:30. I'll see you then. Enjoy your weekend.